Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. To some of you and peace to the rest of you. Blackheart signing black in again. In the title, hyperavailability. What I mean by hyperavailability has to do with why it is that when we have to talk about BFF, and that does not stand for best friends forever for those of you familiar with the manosphere, we have to talk about BFF and we have to talk in general terms because most men can see examples of BFF. Oftentimes it's referred to with profanity, and I need to work on not swearing, so I'm going to refer to it as just TBF, trifling black females. But what about the ones who aren't? We all know that they exist. We know they're there, and I've mentioned them before in previous ones, but I've never dedicated a video to the difference between the two, have I? I've said that the good ones exist, and I've tried to give due credit to them in order to be fair, not to be a simp. I mean, after all, the good ones are already taken. So I can't give them credit where it's due for any selfish reason. It's not going to increase or decrease my chances. It may decrease my chances with women in the future, but it's not going to increase them. But I'm in the process of marrying anyway, so it shouldn't matter. But as we know, even when you marry with the intention of sticking around, but it doesn't mean that it's a guarantee. It never is. Many good people are sadly just not able to hold it together, even though they're good people, even though they mean well, even though they're not doing any wrong. It's sad, but that does happen. Also, the thing is that when you're a man, it's not like being a woman, and that's why it is that there are double standards, which I don't like religiously, but which I understand logically. In these double standards, men get praised for sleeping around because it's an accomplishment. And even in today's time, there's a level of skill demanded. And women can't get praised for that because we men have made that too easy. And again, I say we men because that's something for which we are to blame. Some would say, well, are you going to blame women for making it too difficult? Well, yes, I am actually. Because of for whom the women make it difficult. I have blamed women not so much for having their preferences, I blame them for lying about it. I have blamed Western women, white and black alike, for a certain hybristophilic preference that really is not justifiable by the standards of any other community. Although I do know that there do exist communities like this with similar standards even outside the West. The thing is, I'm just not sure exactly where they are in many cases, outside of maybe Chechnya, and even then it wasn't so much about hybristophilia as much as it was about fitness. There were Chechen women, as I mentioned in the previous video. Well, this used to be a normal standard back then. Chechen women wanted a man that could jump some height off the ground. But it wasn't necessarily about just beating other men up. It was just about fitness, from what I understand, from that standard. It's not only in the West that a woman could wrongly associate manhood with violence, but it is exaggerated in the West, certainly, to the point that it is almost accepted when young women are talking about what kind of man they want. It's darn near expected. But as you're a man, you understand that dating is not going to be the same for you as it is for these women. When you were a man, you were made to understand right off the bat, from the very beginning, you were made to know that you got to come up with some good psychological skills for even the women that like you to admit that they like you, unless you're just one of those lucky guys in the single-digit percentile, 9% or less, for whom women would go out of their way and break all of their rules. And I don't remember which man it was. I don't remember if it was Entrepreneurs in Cars, Coach Greg Adams, or if it was, I can't remember who it was, but someone said that women will make rules for betas and break them for alphas. And the problem is that most men are going to be beta in some situation or another. And I don't like using the term alpha and beta, but because really beta is second in command. The truth be told, beta would be like the vice president or the chief justice of the Supreme Court, and the alpha might be the president. In terms of the police, the alpha might be the sheriff of the county, and the beta might be the chief deputy sheriff or the chief of police. The point I'm making is that these terms are relative, and even beta is high ranking. But at the end of the day, the way that they're now being used, and I'm simply going to use pre-selective or sperm preferred, as Mr. Anderson calls it, and other men who could be beta, who could be somewhere in the middle, who could be sigma, who could be omega. And omegas are the ones that get the worst treatment, period. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, what we see is that women will break rules for the men they deem to be alpha. And it is true. They will make rules for other men and break them for the ones they deem to be alpha. Now, I would say that if a woman meets a man for whom she's willing to break rules, then she needs to be trying to marry that man. And if all the other women are willing to break their rules for the same man, then that would explain why she can't marry that man. But even then, maybe we need to legalize polygyny. Everybody's not going to do it, but it needs to be a legal option. I'm going to tie this into the title hyperavailability right now. If the women find themselves wanting to break rules for men, the question would be, well, why don't they even marry these guys? Why don't they expect to marry them? They're breaking rules for them. Why not go ahead and propose to these men? Well, it's because they know it's not going to work. And they know it's not going to work because they instinctively don't expect a man they like to be available. So later on, they come to associate a man's availability to them with them not liking that man. This can happen to men as well, but with men, it happens in a different way. With men, it happens more so as a lesson than it does a false association. It doesn't come as an instinct to men, it comes as a lesson. But if a bunch of women are going to be chasing after the same few men and we legalize polygyny, the women they're going to have to make a choice openly. And that choice is going to be, you want this man to yourself, and a guy that you may actually like, but other women ain't checking for him and there's no envy, or do you want this other man that you got to share, but you can be envied by other women? Which one? You ain't gonna get both. At least not at a young age. Unless the society, the women collectively in that society decide to mature. What I wanted to tell you though was this: of the women out there, I don't know what percentage of them are playing these games and which percentage of them are more forthright and honest. I'm not sure if it's 80-20 one way or 80-20 the other, or whatever the percentages may be if you substitute them for 80-20. How many women out there are just telling the truth? Look, thanks for the offer, for the date. You're not my type and I'm not going to waste your time. Or there's somebody else I'm already interested in. Nothing wrong with you. Versus those who would say, sure, yeah. And knowing what they're going to do is they're going to take his invitation for free food and then turn around, go home, and call up some other guy who didn't take them anywhere and spend anything on them in order to get their fix. I don't know which percentage or which. I'm really not sure. But Obsidian points out a lot of these games. And if you listen to his video about why black women are the worst dates, that's how he titled the video. I realize that there are black women out there that ain't like that. I realize they're not. The issue is this. If you're a black man, because of the way the game is set up, you are going to find that these women are out there and they are available. If they are only 20% of the women, they are available. If they are 80% of the women, they're available. Whatever the case is, it's something that women also face with men. And that is the hyper availability of the bad options. Regardless of what the percentage is of the of total options that they take up, the bad and the worst options are always available. It's not only because no one wants them. I mean, in the romantic market, that's not even the way that it always works. But the hyper availability of the bad option is there simply because it's bad. And see, for women, because women have more choices with guys, that's why there's no praise for women who sleep around. It's like Donovan Sharp said, women can sleep around based on a decision. Tinder is a great app for women and a waste of time for men. And as more men know this, we're going to find out exactly how many women want the same few men, really want the same few men. There's not a hyper availability of those men, but it's not because men don't. It's not because men are just really bad. In general, it's because women are still, they're only going to want the small percentage. That's how they are. I'm all for men's self-improvement, but let's be realistic. You can have the men self-improve. Enough of them self-improve, the women are still just going to change the standards to where they're still eliminating the majority of the men from being considered even eligible. I mean, if every man is a billionaire, even if the prices of all products and goods remained the same and every man was a billionaire, the women would just go for trillionaires. That's it. If every man was a millionaire, the women would go for billionaires. At the end of the day, left to their own devices, they're going to compete for the same few men. And this is why it is that in my faith, the woman's choice has to be both her choice and a male relative's or a male guardian's choice as well. That means she has to like the guy she's going to marry, but one of the males that has her best interest at heart also has to be able to vet the man's character. The financial standards that man meets are up to her. It's up to her what the financial standards have to be. And oftentimes these male relatives tend to step in and they want to vet the financial standards and not the character. Oftentimes that winds up happening. But what I want to remind Muslim men is that when you are vetting a man for one of your lady relatives, you want to vet his character. The finances are up to her. She may not be able to tolerate certain things, but it's up to her. I mean, if she really can't stand and tolerate that poverty, chances are she'd tell you. High likelihood. But if you're going to go and vet the man, you are to vet his character. Is he actually responsible? Do you see something bad in him? Because we men can usually read other men. And that's how we do it. That's how we're supposed to do it. But as we know, bad men are hyper available. The con man, the manipulator, they're hyper available. They are, they're always out there. What's worse, they know how to read and manipulate women in ways that other men don't. Good guys don't know how to manipulate women. They may know how to be a good man to a woman, but they don't know how to manipulate women. So at the end of the day, what we like to call game is something we have to understand is actually very unique to us. And game as an idea, as a subject, as game as a concept that we have might need to be revamped and revisited, because game implies deception, as I've said before. Since game means deception, that we're pretty much admitting that you have to trick a woman into liking a man. Well, if you're the type that's oriented to deceive women, obviously you don't have the same character as a man who does not deceive women, but who merely says, I will do X, Y, and Z in exchange for LMNOP. And I will do you right, and I'm not going to mistreat you. You see, for women, for a lot of women, especially a lot of Western women, that's not appealing enough. It is for this reason that when women are friends of mine and they want to discuss this topic about men and women, I tell them that the best thing to do is to go for the guy who you like more and more as you get to know him, not the guy that you like within the first 5 minutes per se. Unless you like them from jump and you still like him more and more as you get to know him. The bottom line is that the man who you like increasingly over time and you also can respect and trust is the one you want. If you're looking for him to be all appeal and all emotional roller coaster from the very beginning, then something's wrong. If he relies on that, there's something missing. If he has substance and he's got style, then you will see more style as time goes on because he has substance as well. I've had to explain to women that when I was younger, and some of them would say, well, Black, do you think maybe you need to work on your game or your rap? I would tell them, look, the rap, maybe, I don't know. This is before some of my colleagues told me that my rap was not going to matter anyway because of my phenotype. But I would say, well, I don't know, the rap, maybe, but the game, no. I don't, because game means deception. I'm not trying to trick a woman. No, if I got a tricker, then I'm not dealing with an adult, I'm dealing with a child, and I don't fuck children. Come to realize that if there's any game that is praiseworthy, that was game right there. I just didn't realize I was spitting actual praiseworthy game at that point, because nobody was going to say anything like that. So, at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that the bad are hyper available. Now, bad guys, they're hyper available because they still have to approach women, and they know how to manipulate women, so they're going to go around and around and around, and they're going to do it. And as soon as one woman's done with him, finds out what she's like and is through with him, he's going to go to the next. Then the next, then the next. And these guys rack up different women largely because one gets tired of them. Two get tired of them. And that's how these guys get the most experience and wind up being able to dazzle women the most but not keep them. Deceive women the most but not keep them. And when these women find out what these men are really like and how deceptive and manipulative they are, these women are broken. And so then they become not necessarily evil women, but these women, they have baggage, they got issues, and they bring these issues to the next man. Now they have the sense, a little bit more sense, to not go looking for the same type of dude from before. They got better sense as to what to look for in a man, but they have worse sense as to how and what to be. This is where it starts to hurt. So then you have these women that are also no longer good fits. They may be good people, but they're not good fits. And so they add to the availability of women that are not good fits. They join the numbers of the women that are actually just bad women, therefore they're bad fits. And so this hyper availability comes around. And notice I have to spread the blame here between manipulative men and women. I can't just put it on one gender, really. Now, why these men learn to be manipulative? Well, that's because that's what it takes. So the motive for them being manipulative is still both men and women's fault. That's still the fault of both. But for these men, their willingness to learn this and use this contributes to the hyper availability of these bad, busted, broken up women for regular, normal men and good men. If you are a man, you are a good man especially, If you're a normal man, this is true. If you're a good man, this actually becomes more so true. What you are going to be offered is going to be many bad women and others that are just bad fits, even if they're good people. Good friends but bad wives. For others of you, good friends but bad girlfriends, although as a Muslim, I understand relationships to be in marriage. A lot of you guys don't fully realize that it's not really, we really don't know how many women are bad. The women don't know how many women are bad. Nobody has defined a standard to delineate between good, average, and bad women and then done a study. So we don't have empirical data on it. What we do know, what we all know from experience, is that the bad women and the bad fits are hyper available. They're always out there. That's what we do understand. One of the problems is that we make the mistake of going to the club thinking we're going to find someone. Women make it and men make it. Everyone makes the mistake of going to the club thinking they're going to find someone, each one failing to realize that the need to go to the club precludes them from what the other's looking for. The men that the women really want don't have to go to the club, but the women are stupid enough to go there trying to find these guys. The big ballers. They could go to the club, but they don't have to. They're probably at the club on a weekday night, you there on a weekend night. You know, the guys going to the club, they're looking for the attractive woman that also knows how to behave. But she's a club hopper. She's attractive and she's a club hopper and she knows she's attractive. She don't have to behave because other niggas are sweating her. In her mind, her failed relationships are never because she didn't know how to behave. Never are. Because in her mind, she socialized at a subconscious and conscious level. She's socialized by other women, by her peer group, by that hive mind, to not behave herself if she's attractive. You don't treat no man like he's worthy. You're attractive. Why would you do that? One of the ways I know this to be the case is because I know the story of an African American brother in this country that married a Filipino woman and she spoiled him. And he divorced her because he felt guilty, like he was taking advantage of her. He had been trained that he didn't deserve all of this. Who trained him this way? I don't know what effect his mother had, but I know the sisters in general in the United States from where he had come had him trained to believe this, consciously or subconsciously. More than likely consciously, because he told why he divorced his wife to somebody else who told it to me. He confessed, I felt guilty, like I was taking advantage. That's how he was trained and taught. And it wasn't brothers that sat up and said, you wrong if a black woman treats you really well. You're wrong if an attractive woman treats you well. No one told him this. No man told him this. He had to get this from women. And one of the ways you can get people to believe something is by not telling them, but showing them. One of the ways you can get them to believe it is if you show them and other people show them and no one tells them. And those become the core beliefs for anybody. Don't say nothing, just act like it and do this just like everybody else. That's how some women become convinced that they're ugly. They get treated less than other women by multiple men. That's how, but more importantly, that's actually how a lot of men become convinced that they're less attractive than they really are. They get treated as less than by multiple women. And it's all because they just don't know how to manipulate women, Western women. And so they start thinking there's something wrong with them. And then you got these guys that come along and they know some things about women and they've been treated very well by women. And so they tell these guys, well, yeah, you need to do X, Y, and Z, instead of just saying, well, you know what? Women just don't even think I'm that kind of guy they can do this to. They know I got other women, so they don't do the same things. So they're going to treat me differently. And since they're not treating you the same as they're treating me, you have every right to go to another market, so to speak. You got every right to step out because our asses are abnormal. They can't do this. They're not even addressing the fact these guys that get treated so well aren't even addressing the fact that there is a hyper availability. Whatever the percentage is, there is a hyper availability of bad women and otherwise good women that are just bad fits. And this hyperavailability is worse when you're dealing with normal men and good men who are not oriented to deceive and manipulate women, but rather just be there for them. As a man, I'm tired of people not realizing this. And I'm tired of trying to get people to understand this. As a man, I've analyzed this, but I have to record this one way, no hangouts. I have to record it like this and play this so that nobody can interrupt me. Because if I don't do it this way, some guy that had no problems with women ever in his life is going to come along and start shouting and interrupting so that I never get this point out and explain it. Because in their mind, they don't want guys to realize what's going on. And one of the reasons they don't want it is because, even Alpha Male Strategies admitted this himself. You beta, go ahead and play your role. You paying and I'm laying. He pretty much said that. They don't want normal men that are considered to be, not really betas, but omegas. However, just erroneously misnamed to be betas. They don't want these guys, these normal guys that are unselected, to figure out that they're being requested to pay for somebody else to go and lay. And so it's because it's the ones who know what's going on, they find it to be in their best interest. But some of them also know, some of them realize as well that there's this hyper availability. And some of them don't know that there's a hyper availability of the bad. A lot of women like to sit up and say, well, we've made sex too easy. The men for whom they've made it too easy, they're still going to make it too easy over time. They're not going to change their minds. So we can't expect them to understand it. One of the worst things that's happened in the black community, though, is that you've got wives who have made it too easy for men that aren't their husbands and made it too difficult for men that are their husbands. That's one of the tragedies there. And in fact, the Quran says that when women rebel against you, one of the steps is that you withdraw from the bed. That's what it doesn't say, let her kick you out onto the couch. That's not what the book says. It says you withdraw from the bed. You go sleep somewhere else on your own. This sends a big signal to them. You're the one that withholds. And if she still won't listen, well, you know what? Polygyny works works wonders in this way too. Because one thing people will tell you, as much as women hate polygyny, when they know that their husband has a second wife, maybe not a third and fourth, but when women know that their husband's got a second wife, if they think the husband has a second wife, they behave or they get lost. That's it. Those are the options. They understand they can't use the punani to control a man that's married to another woman anyway. They get it. They better not do that. And I'm going to tell you another thing too, and this is true across cultures. This is not just in the West. Women don't hate polygyny because they love the man. They hate polygyny because they don't want the competition. And they certainly don't want an equal competition. Many women don't care if their husband cheats as long as he doesn't actually marry another woman, because that other woman now has the same rights as her, and that's an actual competition. A wife does not fear much competition from a side chick. Not a whole lot. Not the same as she fears from another wife. A wife does not fear that, usually. But this is why it is that this has to be legal. Everybody ain't got to do it, but when that becomes legal, trust me, in Black America, if it becomes legal and women they can't say anything about it, they can only either behave and treat the man fairly or leave. If they know that these are their options and that's it, you're going to see them change their behavior. And if they really, really don't want to share their husband, then what they're going to do is they're going to pick a man that ain't going to be with two women. It may be a man that she herself likes, but that means she can no longer sit up here and try to pick the man that other women want in order to boost her ego. She may have to pick the man that she likes, but others don't like because he's a plumber or he's a baggage handler or he's got some other gig that doesn't carry prestige. Even if the money's good, it doesn't carry prestige and she can't brag about that in the hair salon. She's going to have to pick that dude. She may have to pick the guy who's an average height. Now, she may like him for some other reason, but his height and his appearance to the outside is average and people don't know why she's with him. She may have to pick that guy if she's really looking for someone that she ain't got to share. Someone that she likes that other people don't know why. But a lot of them ain't gonna do that at first. Not at first. So one of the ways that's going to finally ruin this hyper availability of the bad is going to be not necessarily everybody doing polygyny, but it's going to be the legalization of the option of polygyny and not polyandry. That will not work. It never has. There's a double standard I'm going to support right off the bat, viscerally, without even doing any more critical thinking of what I've already done. That's one of them. Because we already know a man can treat two women equally for the most part, very close to it. The best men can treat women equally with one exception, and that's going to be to the extent that the women treat him differently. There are men that can't treat two women equally at all. They do exist. There's no perfect equity between them. And the Quran says that no husband's going to be perfect in that regard. But there are good men that can treat the women equally up to the point that the women treat them. So the only difference would be how they are treated by the women. That could determine, and that's fair. It may not even be something that can be helped. I mean, if you're married to two women and one shows you more respect, you're going to show her more respect. Naturally. If you're married to two women and one of them appreciates you taking her on trips, you may travel with her more. And so to compensate, you might try to do some more of something else that the other wife appreciates. But you ain't going to take the other wife on trips with you. So you have to find a way to compensate. But most men could do it. We already know polyandry ain't going to work because these women ain't going to treat two men the same. You have to trick a woman into treating two men the same. They have to be identical twins. And even then, she has to not know that they take in turns. Otherwise, she ain't going to treat them the same. One man will do all the screwing and pay none of the price. And the other will pay all the price and get none of the draws. And the only way she would respect that man that she ain't screwing is if she finds out he's screwing somebody else. Maybe if he's married to another wife. That's the only way. Even then, maybe not. She may just ask herself, well, what's wrong with the other woman? Some women are that bitter and that nasty, especially in the West. And women with that mindset are more common than we think. And even if they're only 15% of the female population, the fact is they're so out there and available that it might as well be. And that's what I wanted you to understand about the hyper-availability of the bad option. I wanted women and men to understand that the reason why it seems like so many are bad is because whether that's true or not, they're just always out there in your face and available. That's really what it comes down to. So, brothers, you may need to go ahead and start trusting a few of your female friends, the ones who have shown themselves to be trustworthy. Trust them to not ever introduce you to someone that's bad, and at least not knowingly. Brothers, especially if you got something to offer, you may need to limit women you're even willing to consider dating down to, or preferably marrying actually, but you may need to limit that down to those who are trusted by those who know you and trust you. In other words, if they don't come through a reference that you can trust, they don't come to you and you don't go to them. That might be necessary. I think it will be. If you like this message and it's helped you, I'm not going to ask you to hit the like and subscribe button. I'm not going to ask for a lot of views. These things are your option. But if you like this message, but hell, if it's benefited you, actually, maybe you like it and it's no benefit to you. But if it has benefited you or it's beneficial to somebody that you know, spread the message, because the message is more important than the messenger. And this is why it is one reason that I'm not looking to show my face. I might have to do another video about that later on, because Minister Jap was pointing out some guys who they're just misogynist and they're not doing what he's doing. He may be right, but I may need to do a video on the guys who aren't misogynists but who don't show their faces for different reasons. Then again, I may not have to do it because this is 2019. We know everybody don't show their face. But anyway, if it's benefited you or someone you know, share the message and spread it. Blackheart, signing blackout again.